Hello and welcome to your Qezh channel. In part 4 of this series, we're going to cover the fan favorite hero, Drow Ranger from the land of the Dread Reaches. Let's get started. The race of short elves with purplish skin and white hair is known as the Drow. They are ugly creatures covered in warts who live in the forests. The Drow are famous for 3 things: stealth, silence, and subtlety. In fact, these are the highest values among their people. One of their most important magical abilities is silencing enemies and preventing the casting of loud, noisy spells. Their hatred of noise led them to develop this magical power. And that same hatred would completely change the fate of Traxex. The Drow also had several subgroups, including the Northern Drow, who were renowned for crafting weapons, armor, and similar equipment. It is said that some of the Drow's powers were granted to them through the worship of the divine Grey Owl, a being who appears in the dreams of the greatest Drow and leaves behind tools of war for them. Among their sacred places are underground caverns filled with bloodroot trees, locations that once served as battlefields in bloody wars and became defining sites in the history of the entire Drow race. They have since become holy shrines. Entry into these caverns is only permitted under special conditions and with the utmost respect. Those deemed worthy may harvest a few of the magical branches from the bloodroot trees. Yet despite everything that has been said about the Drow, the Traxex of our story was not a Drow at all. At least, that was how it seemed. On a forest road, a group of bandits lay in ambush for a merchant caravan, unaware that their hiding place was close to a Drow settlement. The unfortunate bandits attacked the caravan and slaughtered everyone within it, creating a great deal of noise in the process. Hearing the disturbance, the Drow were deeply offended and moved toward its source. When they arrived and discovered what had happened, they massacred the bandits and restored silence to the forest. A silence purchased with the lives of an entire caravan and an entire band of raiders. After examining the bodies and preparing to leave, the silence of the forest was broken once more. This time, it was by the crying of an infant, the sole survivor of the caravan. The Drow decided to bring the child back to their tribe and raise him as one of their own. Thus, Traxex, who was not born a Drow, was raised by the Drow. They taught Traxex their customs and traditions, raising and training him as if he were one of them. Yet, surprisingly, the adopted child embodied the abilities and qualities of the Drow better than any true-born Drow. His stealth surpassed that of the finest among them, and he mastered their archery skills to perfection. In an autumn forest carpeted with fallen leaves, Traxex's footsteps were quieter than a spring breeze. Everything was going well until Traxex reached adolescence. Although his skin tone and white hair resembled those of the Drow, his appearance grew increasingly different from theirs. Every Drow was short without exception, but the young Traxex had become taller than even the tallest of them. He lacked the unsightly warts and twisted physique common among Drow. Instead, his symmetrical features and clear skin matched the beauty of his combat prowess. Traxex considered the Drow his family, and had almost forgotten that he was not truly one of them. Yet that truth became more apparent with each passing day, until he finally decided to leave the Drow tribe forever. Traxex, who remains devoted to the traditions of the Drow and still considers himself one of them, now wanders the forest alone as a Drow Ranger. Travelers who lose their way in the wilderness speak of an extraordinarily beautiful ranger who guides them through the trees like a gentle breeze before vanishing like a dream. The only sound that remains of him, the only sound ever heard from the Drow Ranger, is the cold whisper of her arrows as they fly toward the hearts of her enemies. Before we get into the arcana and continue the story, there are 1 or 2 things worth mentioning. First, a word used in her backstory directly refers to the term changeling. If you search for this word, You'll discover that in folklore, fairies, or in this case, our Drow would sometimes steal human babies and replace them with a changeling child. Why they did this and why they swapped infants is anyone's guess. So don't ask me. But that is a recurring theme in many legends. In the story, it is said that despite her appearance, Traxex was completely Drow in spirit. It is possible that she was a changeling, a child who had somehow returned to her true home. However, there is something that confuses me. If she really was a changeling and had been switched as an infant, and if she was truly a Drow, then why doesn't she completely resemble the Drow physically? On the other hand, if she is not a changeling, then why does she share their purple skin, white hair, and uncanny ability to master all of their customs and techniques? I honestly don't know. Something doesn't quite add up. The only explanation that makes the situation seem logical is that Traxex might be a half-breed. Perhaps one of her parents was a Drow and the other a human. That would explain everything perfectly. It's an interesting theory and seems very reasonable, but unfortunately there is no further evidence or story development supporting it. So we'll leave that topic there. Now let's move on to her Arcana. You've probably seen the Arcana intro before. It makes her appear terrifying, ruthless, and completely different from the calm Drow Ranger we know.
I don't care who you are. We're all guilty of something.
But what happened? How did the quiet, cold, highly skilled ranger who wandered through forests and even helped lost travelers become this horrifying creature that seems determined to take revenge on the entire world? The very first line of her Arcana description begins with this. Behind the eyes of the Mad Mask, Traxex suddenly saw the forgotten memories of her youth. Now, since the Arcana set itself doesn't actually include a mask, it's unclear what this Mad Mask is referring to. However, something that many Drow Ranger players probably know is that she has an immortal item called Mania's Mask, whose appearance and name clearly suggest that it is based on the Mask of Madness item from the game. Madness, mania, and similar terms all essentially refer to insanity. From what I understand, and this is a theory that seems almost certain, Mania's Mask, the Mad Mask, and the Mask of Madness are all the same object. They all refer to the same strange crimson mask. But what exactly is this mask, and what did it do to Traxex? The first clue comes from the in-game description of Mask of Madness. If you didn't know, many items in the game have short lore descriptions attached to them. The description of Mask of Madness states that when worn, it transforms its bearer into an uncontrollable force of aggression. That's almost exactly what the item does in gameplay. But why is it called the Mask of Madness? How does it drive its wearer insane? The second clue comes from the description of Mania's Mask, the immortal item based on it. It says, wandering the forests alone, orphaned by those who brought you into the world, separated from those who raised you, hidden from those who might have offered warmth and comfort. This is the road to madness. It's an interesting description. It perfectly captures Traxex's circumstances, which truly do sound tragic. It suggests that such loneliness and isolation are enough to drive someone insane. But what does that have to do with the mask? Does the mask amplify a person's negative emotions until they lose control and descend into madness? Did it take all the pain and loneliness Traxex carried within her and push those feelings beyond their limits? Drow Ranger has experienced it, and it has become more intense, pushing her into this state. But the next clue, according to the usual Arcana lore and the new heroes added to the game, is that very important and even core story information is hidden in their voice lines. But before we go into these Arcana monologues, let's first look at the Arcana explanations themselves. Then, from behind the eyes of the insane mask, Drow suddenly witnessed fragments of her forgotten youth. But beyond her own suppressed fears, the mask revealed even more. This section confirms that the mask brings out a person's hidden fears and repressed issues, but that's not all. It also reveals horrors seen through other eyes at different times, memories of brutality across countless years, and countless deadly scenes etched into every corner of her mind. You might be confused, but simply put, it means that whoever wears the mask not only faces their own suppressed fears, but also sees countless images from many people throughout history, scenes of massacres that were likely committed by previous wearers of the mask. And the intensity of these visions is so overwhelming that it consumes the entire mind of Drow. In fact, it can be said that whoever wears the mask goes insane, seeing all the memories of previous wearers. But continuing, although she has taken the mask off, she must fight against the self-destructive impulses created by the demons behind her eyes. So here we understand that Drow Ranger has somehow managed to remove the mask, but she is still mentally affected by what she has experienced and seen. In any case, within this cycle of violence, her only option is revenge against any deserving victim who crosses her path. Okay, so we roughly understand the situation. Drow has taken off the mask, and now, after seeing these visions, she believes that everyone is guilty and has committed murder and crime. She wants to punish anyone who has even the slightest fault and take revenge on them. Now we understand what the video is saying in the Arcana introduction.
I don't care who you are. We're all guilty of something.
So Drow Ranger has 3 stages, or 3 personalities. First, the simple Drow Ranger who learns the skills of the Drow and helps lost people in the forest. Second, when she finds and puts on the Mask of Madness, spending a while seeing horrific images of massacres committed by previous wearers of the mask who went insane. Third, after the Arcana event, Drow has removed the mask, but due to the madness she has endured, she now considers everyone guilty and seeks revenge on the world. Now let's move on to the monologues I mentioned. At the beginning of the game, Drow says it is divided into parts, and each part expresses something from her perspective.
Some memories are best forgotten, like the day my family died. All my life, that was lost in a blissful fog. But my time in the manic mask burned away that mist. I remember the looks in those killers' eyes. I remember the mundane cruelty. But I also see my new path, a vicarious retribution. I won't be cruel. I will be merciless.
Drow Ranger even remembers her infancy. She describes the massacre of her caravan and family. But there is an important detail here. This mask was supposed to reveal Drow's hidden traumas and fears, such as being abandoned by the Drow and never knowing her parents. Second, she sees the memories of those who wore the mask before and went insane, committing massacres. But none of this should normally allow her to remember the moment her parents died or show her that scene. However, I found a small and interesting theory. If you look closely, it can be said that the killer of her parents and caravan, when she was a baby, was someone who had previously worn this mask. That is why Drow is able to recall the scene of the massacre, not as her own memory, but as the memory of the killer, which has now been transferred into Drow. This is what makes that scene come back to her memory. In this way, Drow's downfall and her current revenge-driven state are better justified. In short, this was a small theory I wanted to share with you. Now let's move on to the second part of the monologues.
Most who claim the Mad Mask die soon after. It stokes a mania that leads to violent death. A fighter cannot survive without regard to safety. But for those who can resist the pull, there's power in that fervor.
Okay, here we also get more information from the mask. Section 3.
I resisted the influence of the mask. I freed myself from it. But I can't unsee the horrors it still shows me. I feel traces of magic. A dark stain remains from its awful curse. The bloodlust is ever rising. I fight to aim my bow only at those that deserve the worst.
This part is about the presence of magic in the mask, which makes us think about how and by whom this mask was created, since it holds such power. But for now, we don't really know anything specific. Section 4.
My days of helping lost travelers are over. I don't trust myself around others anymore. Everyone's guilty of something.
Monkey Section 5.
This weapon is fit for a prince. I like to remember how he squealed as he died. He had it built to do harm, and his spirit need not worry. I aim to do harm, and if I can help it, mostly to his twisted kind.
This relates to her new weapon, which apparently belonged to a prince, and Drow obtained it after killing him. It seems to refer to someone specific, but there isn't much information found about that prince, and that's basically the whole story of Drow Ranger and her arcana. Let's mention a few final points and finish. First, you might have noticed that Drow doesn't say anything special in the game when you buy the Mask of Madness. No dialogue at all. Why? Because if you have the arcana and buy Mask of Madness, she actually says this:
You have no control over me, Mask. In the end, I took a measure from you.
Honestly, I couldn't fully understand whether it's an expression or not, but it probably means something like, I recognize you, or something similar. It basically suggests that the mask no longer has the same influence over her, and she can control it now. Another point is the mention of the bloodroot trees in her lore. I mentioned before that there is a cave containing bloodroot trees, and if someone manages to reach it, they can break off and take its branches. This whole idea appears in one of her immortals. If you look at her bow, called Reaper's Dudyscore or Wreath of the Reaper, you can see that it is made of 2 intertwined branches with blood-red leaves. These are actually made from those bloodroot tree branches. The third interesting point is that Drow Ranger has no voice lines in the game. This is a reference to the silent strike skill she learned from the Drow, allowing her to move silently in the game. Her items and skins also have some interesting details. One of them is her bow, said to have been given to her in a dream by a divine owl that is worshipped in her lore. Another item I found has a strange detail. It is called the Howlwind Bow. It was added to the game years ago, and on this bow there is a white wolf's head with glowing blue eyes and teeth, which looks very familiar. I think this might be the Crystal Maiden persona. If you look closely at them together, the description of this bow says that in the endless cold of the far north, there is a giant white wolf whose howls bring the cold of death. Many have tried to kill it, but only one person managed to pierce its side with an arrow, Drow Ranger herself. Honestly, I was surprised that such a narrative connection from years ago to now might actually be referenced by Valve, but everything seems to fit together. However, I don't know why the crystal wolf's head is on Drow's bow. Maybe it isn't actually her. Maybe it's one of her kind. Or maybe it's just a stylized statue of her face. If more information is revealed in future lore or Crystal Maiden persona voice lines, I'll definitely look into it more. What do you think? Interesting? I'll also try to review Drow Ranger's dialogue in a separate video. She has some really interesting lines about revenge and a unique atmosphere. Thanks for watching.